Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
You all look so beautiful. Give yourself a hand clap. You look so beautiful. You look so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening. My name is Tracy Hines, and I am a professor in the social work department, and I will have the privilege of doing the being the moderator for this evening, okay? So, I am excited. I will try to stick to the script. I know you've all worked hard all day, and you want to get to these lovely speakers this evening, and I want to hear all that they have to say. So I am going to try and stick to the script. Okay, so before we begin, I would like to introduce the social work department here at Methodist that is hosting this event. Dr. George Hendricks, who is the Dean of School of Public Affairs. Dr. Hendricks, could you stand and so we can see you? The best dean in the world at the best school in the world. Dr. Carla Fagan, the chair of the social work department. The best chair in the world at the best school in the world. Professor D'Ampert McCall. The best field director in the world at the best school in the world. And myself, Tracy Hines. Welcome. We also have some adjuncts. I am not sure if they're here, but if you are and I call your name, please stand up. Our adjuncts in the social work department, Miss Nicole Johnson.
She's here.
She's not here, okay. Miss Cindy Brooks. Okay. Miss Carla Smith. Miss Kenyette Garrett. And Miss Elaine Frangakis. Okay, let's give them a hand clap. Even though they're not here. We appreciate them. We appreciate them. Okay. I will be doing your welcome and the invocation, and then we will begin with our program. Today we give thanks for each and every one of you that taught it not robbery to take a few hours out of your busy lives to come and celebrate with the social work department, to celebrate social work and Women's History Month. On behalf of Methodist University, Dr. Hancock, and the social work department, thank you. Thank you and welcome. Welcome to a celebration of social work at its finest in Dr. Marilyn Bryan, the Honorable Patricia Timmons Goodson, the Honorable Margaret Highsmith Dixon, Mistress Lori Jones Gibbs. We have awesome women, and also in Dr. Sharon Cooper. We celebrate because these women have impacted and influenced not just their homes, not just Cumberland County, not just Fayetteville, but North Carolina. You see, social work is not just a degree, it's a lifestyle. It's a calling to hear and accept the greatest challenge in life, to go beyond yourself, your environment, your circumstances, and dare to shift the atmosphere. This evening, we invite you to open your ears and your hearts to hear how these dynamic atmospheric shifters have weaved the threads of their lives to impact the lives of every woman, man, boy, girl, young and mature they have come in contact with. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And if you will join me for our invocation. For this is the day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad. Be glad that we are living in a time where women can be anything they desire to be. Be glad that we have been graced with the presence of women that stand strong, tall, and bold to the charge of paving the way for change. Today we give thanks for the grace and ability to impact and influence at least one life. Today, we are ever so mindful not to take it lightly, the importance of change, one life at a time. Today, we are thankful for each and every woman present here today, each and every man present here today. We are thankful for their unique thread which have weaved together in such a way to impact and influence many lives. Gracious God, make each of us an instrument for your grace to be used. Weave us into a community demonstrating your power, love, patience, kindness, peacefulness, and tenderness. Bless us and our differences and undergird our courage to stand together. We call on you today to gather us in love. Lead us to better know you and glorify you on each and every step of the journey of our lives. In the name of Jesus, let us now keep silent and breathe in the love of God while we exhale, paving the way for change, one life at a time. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I did that without crying. Okay. And now we will have the introduction of our first speaker, Dr. Marilyn Bryan. Dr. Bryan is the chair of the Methodist University Board of Trustees, and she is the chairwoman of the Campaign for Methodist University. Building Excellence. She also serves as the editor of the Jane Addams Papers, is the former executive director for the Cumberland Community Foundation, and has served on the North Carolina Historical Commission. These are just a few of her accomplishments. So let's put our hands together and welcome Dr. Marilyn Bryan.
Thank you, one and all. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, good. This was a very special thing for me to be asked to participate in this. I don't see myself as a leader like many of the people who are here with me on this panel. I always see myself as sort of a mosaic of all the experiences and the education and the mentors and the role models and that I've had throughout my life. I guess it all began with my parents and all the people that came after who encouraged me to undertake a lot of education, a lot of experience, to reach out and take whatever I could from life that was good, as long as it was grounded in the 10 Commandments, for one thing. That was from my grandmother and my mother. And the Golden Rule. Both those things were very important. My grandmother was from a very different century. She was actually born in the 19th century. And for her, education was significant, and learning a skill was significant because she felt that a woman didn't need just to rely upon her husband or getting married, but to have a skill as well. And one of the things she tried to do for me when I was a child was she thought that if I could cook and I could sew and I knew how to iron, I could always get a job. Of course, that was in the days before she didn't know about washing ware. But I must say that the other thing she did, although she worked all of her life, was that she gave back. Always gave back, always participated, always reached out to others, as did my mother. So I had powerful role models from the day I was born almost. And throughout my life, I've reached out for experiences that I think will benefit me. And through those experiences, I've tried to benefit others. So one of the important things I would say to you, if you want to think of your role as leaders now and in the future, is be sure you reach out to other people. Be sure you reach out for other experiences. Learn from them. Learn from your mistakes. I was very, very lucky to have a whole set of people who were mentors to me and were role models. I learned as a young woman that it was quite all right to shake hands with a man or a woman, because when I grew up, it was the pleasant thing to do if you were a woman, simply to nod when you were introduced, or to offer your fingers, not your hand. And then I saw a woman very directly look at someone and say, "I'm very glad to meet you. Tell me about you." And I said to myself, that's who I want to be. That's how I want to be. That became part of me. Those are the kinds of little experiences that you don't even know that you're having, but you will have if you're open to those experiences and open to education more than there's in a book. Be open to education from other people and other experiences. I learned about lecturing from a professor I had who would walk into the lecture hall, begin with sentence 1, lecture straight through for 50 minutes without stopping, without an or an and end up on a period. I could never in my life see how he could do that. It was beyond me. But I thought to myself how effective that was when I sat in his class. And I took every class he offered because I learned a lot, and I still couldn't figure out how he did it. But when you learn from people like that, you can learn that you want to be like that. You may not make it, but it's worth a try. And then I had a wonderful professor, actually was the dean for whom I worked when I was at the University of Illinois in Chicago. For some reason, he wanted to help me be better than I was. And he made it possible for me not only to stay in my tenure track, but at the same time to have enough time to get an MBA from the University of Chicago, another university, to learn how to do exhibits, to learn how to do restored buildings, to learn how to be a documentary editor, to learn how to be an appraiser of documents, and in that process, my horizons were expanded enormously. One of my favorite pictures is of me and General Omar Bradley, whose papers I got to work on. I'm standing there with him, and on my head is his World War II helmet. There were other things like that in my life because I reached out to take those things and those experiences. And I had a mentor who was in my corner and wanted me to succeed and to have all these experiences. So as a leader, if I am one, and I never see myself that way, I will tell you that, I have this mosaic of experiences that I bring to what I give or can give to others. And I use all the things that I have learned every day as I work. One of the most important things as a role model in my life has been a woman that I never knew personally. She died before I was born. Many of you who are social workers here know her, and I hope you know her well. Her name was Jane Addams. She founded, or had a huge hand in founding, what you are studying. the fact that there is social work is because of Jane Addams. And I often look at all of the things that she brought to the table as a leader. There's a lot to learn from her. She started out with an idea that she had. She took a risk to make that idea become a reality in a social settlement in a slum area of Chicago. That grew into a national movement that resulted in the end of child labor as we knew it during her day. Votes for women, she helped with that. She helped women get jobs that paid. She was in favor of progressive and compulsory education. She worked with immigrant education. She worked with adult education, and the list goes on and on and on. What were the things that made her so significant and made her such a good and successful leader? She arrived from a small town in Illinois called Cedarville, Illinois. In Chicago, she came in 1889, totally unknown in Chicago, totally unknown. She just had an idea about what she could do. 10 years later, she was known internationally and loved internationally for what she was able to do. She was articulate, both in written word and oral word. She was thoughtful. She was a listener. She was someone who was a risk taker. She was someone who could tell people who were very wealthy about people who were not very wealthy. She understood power. She understood money. She had great credibility wherever she went. She honed those things. She worked on those things. And at the core of it all was education. She educated herself her whole life long. Before she went to the hospital at the end of her life, the hospital from which she didn't come back, she was finishing reading a book. Her folks came to get her and said, "The ambulance is here, it's time for you to go." And she said, "I cannot go until I finish my book." Education to her was lifelong and from many, many sources. She built friendships, she built coteries of people. She made it possible for women to get professional jobs, not only as social workers, but out of her friendship circle came the first head of the Children's Bureau, the first head of the Women's Bureau, and the first female cabinet officer. Powerful stuff. She took a risk. She kept up with it. She kept current. She kept helping change happen. She liked people. People liked her. She was incredible as a role model. I encourage you to read about her and to understand all of the things she did. And the one thing I want to leave you with, because my time is up, is she had passion for what she did. She didn't just do it because it was out there to do, or somebody said to her, "Do this. We need doing this." She cared about people. She cared about the programs. When in 1896, when she went to England on a visit and was so beloved by everybody there and was interviewed by London newspapers, in one interview, the interviewer said to her, why do you keep putting up with those people that you're trying to help in that slum? Don't you get tired of this? Isn't this awful? Why do you do it? And her answer was, it is the work I do because it is the work I love. Her passion was there. So whatever you do in your life, you can all be leaders. Don't forget the passion. Don't forget the passion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bryan. Don't forget the passion. Don't forget the passion. And our next dynamic speaker is the Honorable Patricia Timmons Goodson. The Honorable Patricia Timmons Goodson was appointed to the Supreme Court of North Carolina by Governor Michael Easley. Justice Patricia Timmons Goodson will always be due special notice in the history books as the first African American woman to sit on North Carolina's highest court. On February 1st, 2006, she became the 4th woman and the 95th North Carolinian to serve on the state Supreme Court. The voters of North Carolina overwhelmingly affirmed her appointment in the November 2006 general election by granting her an 8-year term. She served 28 years in the judiciary of North Carolina prior to her retirement from the court in 2012. Her judicial career has influenced and has included service as a trial judge on the state district court and service as an appellate judge on the North Carolina Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court of North Carolina. Justice Timmons Goodson's years of judicial service to the people of North Carolina have been recognized with awards such as the Order of the Longleaf Pine, Liberty Bell, Appellate Judge of the Year, the William R. Davey Award, 3 honorary degrees, and induction into the North Carolina Women's Hall of Fame. A product of Cumberland County Public Schools, she earned a bachelor's degree of arts in speech from the North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1976, Juris Doctorate from its School of Law in 1979, and a Master's of Judicial Studies in 2004 from Duke University of Schools. Justice Timmons Goodson is actively involved with the American Bar Association as she serves on the editorial board of the ABA Journal and the ABA Law School Accreditation Committee. She maintains her community service with the Fayetteville Chapter Links Incorporated and board service as a trustee for Guilford College and a director for the North Carolina Civil War History Center. President Barack Obama appointed Justice Timmons Goodson a member of the United States Commission on Civil Rights in July 2014 and later designated her vice chair. The commission is an independent, bipartisan agency charged with advising the President and Congress on civil rights matters. Justice Timmons Goodson is married to Dr. Ernest J. Goodson, a Fayetteville orthodontist, and they have 2 adult sons. And recently, she was recognized and awarded at the 80th Annual Conference of the Association of Social and Behavioral Science on March 20th, 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, Justice Timmons Goodson.
while she's getting the other mic. Are you able to hear me? Yes. Don't worry, you can take from my time, that introduction and stuff. Friends, I am honored to be with you this afternoon as a part of Methodist University's celebration of social work and Women's History Month. You know, there's something really special about women coming together with the express purpose of encouraging one another. And I'm so glad to be a part of that. I want you to know that my prayer is the very same as the one that was uttered by the little mannish boy that I'm told was in the old-fashioned country store. I'm told that he was running around and refused to heed his mother's words that he stopped running before he hurt himself. I understand that he slipped and found himself falling headfirst into a barrel of molasses, and he was heard uttering, "May my tongue be equal to my opportunity." I want you all to know that I am a praying woman, and for sure that's the prayer that I have this afternoon as I look at a camera here in a room full of people and this august body of tremendous women. Anyway, so Lord, may my tongue be equal to my opportunity. I've been asked to share my career path, my journey to success, and I want you to know that I'm going to endeavor to do just that. During my tenure on the Supreme Court of North Carolina, I was often asked how it is that I arrived at the Supreme Court. Did I do anything special? What got me to the court? And I reluctantly spoke of myself and about my life, as I'm going to do this evening, just so that folks can see and understand that there's nothing particularly special about me. I assure you that I didn't set out to serve on the Supreme Court of North Carolina or on the United States Commission on Civil Rights. I simply worked hard, and that in fact hard work is the key to anyone's success. I have had the good fortune of having many mentors in my life. Unlike some people, I didn't have to look very far to find my mentors. I'm talking about Rosebud Jones Timmons, Elvira Tyndall, my mother, my father. They were excellent examples for me right there before me each and every day. Each believed in God. Each worked hard. Each treated all that came before them as they would want to be treated. They were just good, solid folks. And so that's where I found my first mentors. But my mentors have included from this very community, Representative Mary McAllister, Senator Tony Rand, our longtime district attorney Ed Granis, Representative Annie Brown Kennedy that served in the legislature from Winston-Salem, our Chief District Court Judge Beth Keever, the Chief Judge of the North Carolina Court of Appeals Linda McGee, Judge Jim Wynn, just to name a few. These individuals, either directly or indirectly, taught me lessons that strengthened me, that empowered me, and I believe increased the chances that I'd get to the Supreme Court of North Carolina, and if or and when I arrived, that I'd be as prepared for that service as possible. These powerful lessons have sustained me throughout my legal journey. Let me tell you, though, that as I reflect on my judicial career, I'm profoundly struck by the improbability of my career path. For you see, I was born to an enlisted Army soldier. Sergeant First Class Edward Timmons was his name, and his homemaker wife, Beulah. My father's now deceased, but my mother continues to live off of Murchison Road in the 1960s style ranch home that they purchased upon my father medically retiring from the Army. But my parents were from Florence, South Carolina, and they could not have predicted that I'd one day enter the legal profession and serve on the highest court of a former Confederate state. The improbability is not due to a lack of ambition for their oldest child or that I lacked the intellectual ability to succeed, but the times, you see, were different. African Americans and women were severely limited in the career options available. As others have described, the only professional opportunities available to African Americans during the era of my birth were, quote, teachers and preachers. And I'm proud to say that my family had a fair share of them. My late father would have proudly pounded his chest as he witnessed the achievements of his oldest daughter. And my mom, Beulah, does a great imitation of that even now. But my parents sowed the seeds of my professional achievements when they courageously left Florence, South Carolina, and embarked upon a career in the military. The quality education afforded dependents of servicemen, the life lessons learned through military service, and the regular interaction with different races of people, and the exposure to travel all prepared me for the day when a greater equality of opportunity would exist for all in our nation. You've heard that I graduated from you've heard that I was educated in the public schools of Cumberland County. Well, that was Pine Forest High School right down the road. I was in the last graduating class in the old building. I went on to UNC Chapel Hill for my undergraduate studies because my parents were convinced, and they convinced each of their 6 children, that a better life could be had through education. I bought that hook, line, and sinker, and so went on to UNC Chapel Hill, graduating with a degree in speech. I went on to law school there at the university, and then came home to Fayetteville, North Carolina, where Mr. Ed Grannis gave me my first legal job. I worked as an assistant district attorney and learned many, many lessons there. I think that the greatest lesson that I learned was, as Mr. Grannis taught, you're to make the very best decision that you can on a case based on the information that you have, your understanding of the law, and then you're not to let anyone bully you into changing your mind. And once you make a decision, don't you back off of it. While there may be times when, in hindsight or retrospect, perhaps you should have made a different decision, you should always remember that you made the decision based on the information that you had at that time. And even if the decision does not work out as you had planned, doesn't necessarily mean that it was a bad decision. I learned that lesson more than 30 years ago, and it continues to work for me now. But I stayed in the DA's office for roughly 2 years and went to the Lumbee River Legal Services. I was a staff attorney with Lumbee River Legal Services. We provided legal services for indigent or poor individuals in civil cases. I went to that office because I had heard that they were creating a new district court position. As a matter of fact, Mr. Grannis came to me one day and says, Timmons, I'm not telling you what to do, but if I were you, I'd be considering that judgeship. I told Mr. Grannis that I didn't want to be a judge, that every time you made a decision, you made somebody angry. And besides, I had a way with juries, and I was the next greatest trial attorney in the state of North Carolina. What I had not figured out at that time was that I represented the state, that I was a prosecutor, and more often than not, the state was going to prevail, given the tremendous resources that the state had. So it had nothing to do with me being a great trial lawyer, necessarily. But I did end up asking Governor Hunt to appoint me to the bench. Therein, lesson 2, and that is that often others will see in you qualities long before you see them in yourself. Mr. Grannis and some others in this community thought that I'd make a fine judge. Well, my family thought we had died and gone to heaven when they got me through law school, so had never even thought about becoming a judge. Served as a district court judge here for 12 and a half years, and enjoyed most days. But there came a time when I understood that my heart was beginning to harden, and that's not what you want serving on your district court. You need compassionate people. You need individuals that understand something about life, understand the imperfections of others, and of course the imperfections of yourself. And so I thought that it was time to leave. So I asked Governor Hunt, there was a vacancy on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. I went back to him and asked him to appoint me. He did not. So I continued working in the district court judge's office. I received a call shortly after Governor Hunt called to inform me that I would not receive the appointment. The call came from a gentleman that was serving on the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And what he said was, "Pat, I hope that you will reapply or continue to seek a seat on that court. I think you would be good at it." And it took me several tries, and it's not uncommon for that to happen. Therein, another lesson. Lesson learned. Often, it's going to take more than one try at something. And you're not to be deterred. If you want it, if you're serious about it, if that's your passion, go get it. Folks aren't handing anything out here. And so I did reapply, and ended up being appointed to the North Carolina Court of Appeals. Stayed there for a period of roughly 8 years. Thought I'd retired at age 50, and ended up being called back to the Supreme Court of North Carolina. Folks, y'all have been mighty patient. Pat can stand here and talk to you about Pat all evening long, but I'm not going to do that. If you take nothing else from the remarks that I've made, I hope that you will take the fact that the Lord has blessed all of us with particular talents, and those are His gifts to us. What we do with those talents are our gifts back to Him. And I hope you know, as I know, that God created no junk. You're all here for a purpose. Your challenge is to determine just what that purpose is. And once you do, you're going to soar. Thank you very much.
Wow. It's hard standing behind such dynamic speakers. We are so fortunate this evening, so fortunate. Thank you. Thank you, Judge Timmons Goodson. Thank you. Stick to it, and we've all been given gifts and talents. Use it. Our next speaker is the Honorable Margaret Highsmith Dixon. And I guess from the last introduction, I don't need to tell all her business. So we're going to make this brief and to the point. Read along with me. The Honorable Margaret Highsmith Dixon was elected to the North Carolina House of Representatives in 2002 and appointed to the North Carolina Senate in 2010 by Governor Beverly Perdue. She serves on numerous boards, including Methodist University, Lillian's List Action Fund, and the Women's Forum of North Carolina, and the North Carolina State Bar. Let's put our hands together and welcome.
Thank you all so much, and I'm really honored to be here. We talked about it a little bit. We were in a room somewhere over here before we started, and we talked about how wonderful it is to be with a group of women, and I'm tremendously honored to be with these particular women, just who've done amazing things and made amazing contributions, not just to our community, but to our state and to our nation. And so it's really a great honor, and we kind of chuckled a little bit and said, there's really nothing like girl time. So I'm truly honored to be here. Now, while former Justice Timmons Goodson certainly knows something about elective politics because she was the first African-American woman elected to the appellate courts, to the Court of Appeals in 1998, is that right? Yeah. I think it falls to me to talk a little bit about elective partisan politics. And how, like, she wondered how she found herself in the Supreme Court. I sometimes wonder how I found myself in the North Carolina General Assembly. But in many ways, I'm a typical example of how women get into politics. I ran for political office after my children were pretty much out of the house, and after I'd had a whole other career in a family business. Men seem to run earlier, and they do it in conjunction with whatever career they've already established. But unlike many women who run, I did come from a political family. My grandfather had been, one of my earliest memories was going with my grandparents to Raleigh, where my grandfather, in his 70s at that time, was being sworn in as a state senator. And I remember being there. Someone had sent them the biggest basket of fruit I'd ever seen. It looked like thousands of bananas to me. I was about 6 years old. But I do remember the occasion. I must not have been too impressed, though, because my grandmother told me that I fell asleep at dinner that night in the Sir Walter Hotel and conked my head on the table, and they had to call the doctor. But at any rate, I was put into a political, not arena, but a political atmosphere early on, and politics and public policy were always under discussion in our household. When our family business was sold in 2001 here in Fayetteville, I had to figure out something to do. I didn't have a job anymore, and I had to figure out something to do. It didn't take me long. I knew what I wanted to do. I had always wanted to run for the General Assembly, and my cousins and family members were not especially interested in paying me a salary while I was in Raleigh. So I wasn't able to do that while we were still in our family business. But once that was gone, I ran, and it was, as Justice Timmons Goodson said, after a lot of hard work and just some dumb luck, all the stars aligned in my direction, and I did defeat a 3-term incumbent and went into the House of Representatives. It was my first elective office after having been president of my high school senior class of 47 girls. And if you don't think that was political, whoa. Most women come to political office one of two ways. They get involved in community issues, often a school board, because something's going on in their children's schools that don't suit. And they finally come to the conclusion that, you know, hey, I can make a better decision than these people doing it now, and I'm just going to run for that. And they do. And that's how they get started. Other women are asked to run for office, and I've asked a number of women to run for political office, most notably here in this community, Diane Parfit, who was elected to the House. But it's interesting, when men are asked to run for political office, as many are, they generally say, oh yes, I'm a very well-qualified candidate, I'll do that. Women tend to say, Who, me? I can't do that. And that's surely one of the reasons that that women are not represented in the numbers we are in the population in either elective or appointive office. Women are a little bit more than 51% of the people in North Carolina, and we are 54% of the voters of North Carolina. But we are woefully underrepresented in both elective and appointive offices. And you may have seen just this week, there's been a study from Meredith College that finds that women, and I want y'all to think about these numbers. Look at this room, where we have some men in here, thank goodness, but we're mostly women in here. But think about this. Women now hold less than 25% of these offices in North Carolina. Less than 20% of the elected positions with taxing and spending authority are held by women. 80% of those decisions are made by men. Of the 100 county commissions in North Carolina, women serve on how many? Just take a guess. How many county commissions of the 100 have women on them? 56. So 44 have no women on them. Meredith also found that women have lost ground in representation since the 2010 midterm elections, and this is true not only in North Carolina but in other states across the nation. Women make up about 24% of the people in state legislatures nationally. Colorado has the highest percentage, 41%, and Louisiana the lowest. Guess what that is? Just under 12. The percentage of women in Congress is also, to me at least, a little embarrassing. It's less than 20% of the members of Congress are women, which is far less than some than countries around the world, which are much less advantaged than we are. And the Board of Governors, which is the governing body for our university system, has very few women members, despite the fact that of the students in our state, in the UNC system, there are 225,000 plus students in the system, are not overwhelmingly, but predominantly women. Even though women are not represented on the board, they are, but in very few numbers on the 32-member board that governs our system. The good news is that women are trusted by the voters. In a race between two generic candidates, Jane Jones over here and John Smith over here, Jane is going to get a slight but sometimes significant bump of 2 to 5 percentage points in the election just because she's viewed as more trustworthy than Jim. She may not be, but the voters give her that advantage. And women who do run for public office, even though they're not as many as we would like to see, the ones who do run generally get elected. 25% of the candidates in North Carolina last year were women candidates, and 63% of those were elected to the office they sought. There are many reasons, of course, that I think women are viewed as more trustworthy, and I'm going to mention only one because this is one that drives me crazy. Raise your hand if you have ever heard of a woman candidate or a woman elected official who has texted selfie pictures of herself and her parts to some guy a la Mr. Wiener. Have you ever heard of a woman who did that? No. So why does it matter? Why does it matter who got selected? Why does it matter whether the person making the decisions is a man or a woman? Are women better at decision making than men? No, some are and some aren't. And some men are better than some women. But it matters because when decisions are being made for your school system, for the city of Fayetteville, for the county of Cumberland, for North Carolina, for our nation, it matters because you need many points of view and many life experiences at the table. As a mother of 3 and a person with a business background, my life experiences are different than, say, a male college professor here who is never married and has no children, or say an African American from a rural part of North Carolina. What we've experienced is very different than the others. And each of these backgrounds brings different points of view to the table, and they all need to be represented. Better decisions are made, and businesses know this. Better decisions are made if you have many voices at the table. so if you just have one collection of voices, and I'm just going to pick on one group of folks here, say middle-aged white men, and God love them, I've got 2 sons who are going to be middle-aged white men someday. They're not bad decisions or bad experiences, but they're limited life experiences and limited ways of making decisions. You need lots of people at the table to make the decisions for all of us. My own experience, and I think that the same is true for many women who run for office, is that running and governing are entirely 2 different things. Running for public office requires raising buckets of money, depending on what the office you seek is. In my last race for the state senate in 2010, think about this. My opponent and I together raised and spent well over $1 million to get a job that paid just under $14,000 a year. And that doesn't even count the money that was what's called dark money, that's just beginning to come, at that point was just beginning to come into races after the Citizens United Supreme Court decision earlier that year. There was some of that money in that race, but now it's just overwhelming. And any person breathing in North Carolina in 2014 saw that dark money in the Hagan-Tillis U.S. Senate race. It was just overwhelming. That race cost, I think the total was over $100 million. And I think what good could have been done with that money. When people ask me now if I would ever run for office again, one of the things I say is that if I never have to ask, many of you in here are my friends, if I never have to ask you again for $1,000, if I never have to ask a stranger again for $1,000 or more, that's okay with me. I'll be all right if I don't have to do that again. But running allowed me to meet people I would never have known and glimpse lives I would never have known about, even though I didn't experience it myself. It taught me how wonderful the people of North Carolina are, no matter what our background. It's a wonderful place to be, and I'm so proud to have been here. I saw places I would not have seen and just had experiences I wouldn't have had. I loved campaigning. I loved the door knocking and the shaking hands and the meeting people, except for the day a man in his birthday suit answered the door. That was a little traumatic. But most of the time I loved it. But the money and the meanness of politics, and I see some folks in here who know this well, the money and the meanness of it can be very hard. And anyone who says otherwise is telling you what my grandmother would have called a teawadi. And I try to be very honest with people when I'm asking them to consider running, to tell them that it's not a cakewalk. You have to be strong and just get through it. Serving in office is something else. I went to Raleigh in 2003, wary of how I would be treated as a woman in a group largely of men, many of whom had been there for a long time. And then, of course, how I would be treated by the people of the other political persuasion. But I was happily surprised on both counts. While members do disagree with each other, even members of the same party disagree with each other sometimes, regularly they disagree, and often very loudly, I found that it was rarely personal and that the acrimony generally passed. It took me a while to figure out why that was, but eventually I did. And it's because a woman's vote counts every bit as much as the guy's vote. And at the end of the day, everybody's got one, and so they want yours, and they're not going to burn the bridges that they will never get yours again. I also learned that most issues in the General Assembly, and I suspect this is true in most legislative bodies, are there's consensus on most issues. They either fail by a large margin or pass by a large margin. But the ones we hear about are the controversial ones, the painful ones, the partisan ones. But you do have consensus on most things. I did find, though, that it serves no purpose when a legislator, and I think it's true in county commission, city council, if you hold grudges, because as Scarlett O'Hara would say, tomorrow's another day and you've just got to move forward. And I believe this is true, except when one party, it doesn't make any difference which one it is, but when one party has all the control, then there's no reason for collaboration because it doesn't matter. and there are no stoppers. That party will continue until the voters make a change. I also learned that government is very complicated. No one person knows it all, and you must learn to depend on experts in fields and people who are knowledgeable about the issues that you are not. You need to gather all the information you can and understand that no issue is ever black and white, black or white. It is 50 shades and more of gray. There are many permutations of every single issue. But when you press that button for your vote, that vote is yours. You will own it till the day you die. That it is your vote, no matter how you came to make that vote. I also learned that the biggest issues are not necessarily the most meaningful ones. I did work on some really big bills while I was there. The state lottery bill, the Goodyear incentive bill for Goodyear out here, well, right up the road, and some others. And these are bills that have had and continue to have repercussions in our state and certainly in our own community. But the ones that meant the most to me were smaller, less public bills, particularly one for to establish a savings account for college deductions, a state tax credit for saving for college deductions, college cost. And these are not the people who were able to go to their brokerage and put in $50,000 to educate a child or a grandchild. These are people who save $50 or $100 a month, and that tax deduction was valuable to them. And it took me 4 years to do it, but we did it. Another one that was very meaningful to me, and this may resonate with the social workers, is that North Carolina has among the most restrictive adoption laws in the country. And there were cases, and increasingly so as time moves along, of adult adoptees, we're not talking children, we're talking adults, who would like to contact their birth parents and vice versa. Birth parents want to know what happened to the child that they relinquished, but who is no longer a child. Well, there was no avenue to do that. And so we worked, and it was not easy, it was surprisingly difficult, but we worked for several years and got what was called the Confidential Intermediary Program, which allows contact by mutual consent. Nobody's going to come knocking on your door. You both have to agree to it. It was the most meaningful thing, and a legislator who was an adult adoptee himself, a young man from Raleigh, contacted his family, who turned out to be from Sampson County, through that program. And when his newly found brother and I met each other, both of us burst into tears, the brother and I both, because I knew that I had helped these people. And that just meant a tremendous amount to me. That's much easier to understand than somebody winning the lottery, really. And it's much more personal and more human. I'm also proud to have sponsored the legislation for Carvers Creek State Park, which I hope y'all have visited north of Spring Lake. It's a great spot to go. Take your dog. It's just a great spot. And it will be there in perpetuity for North Carolinians and anybody else who visits. Elective service has plenty of bumps, as does campaigning, but it was a wonderful experience. I look back at it, and together they were probably among the most rewarding experiences of my life. I am just profoundly humbled that the people of my community trusted me to make those decisions and did so 4 times. I'm so grateful to have had that experience. It was rich, exhilarating, and occasionally terrifying. But I'm just so grateful to have been honored in that way. And I hope, my deepest hope is that I did provide service for my community and my state. Mary Lynn Bryan told us to have passion, and I agree with that. Pat Timmons Goodson told us to keep trying, and I agree with that too. But one of the things that has sustained me in the times that I didn't know what to do, or that I was afraid to do something in the General Assembly, I remembered the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, who is one of my, certainly not mentors, but someone I admire tremendously. She said, and many of you will know this quote, she said, "You must do the thing that you think you cannot do." And that has, many a night I've said, I'm going to get up tomorrow and do this because I have to do this. Thank you so much for listening.
the Honorable Margaret Highsmith Dixon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Work out your fear. The thing you fear the most, work it out. It's going to be all right. And in sticking with my lesson learned tonight, read along with me so I can introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mistress Lori Jones Gibbs. She is the Vice President and Community Development Carolinas Market Manager for PNC Bank. She directs a team of people who focuses on partnering with organizations to initiate and expand existing community and economic development activities. Prior to joining PNC Bank, she held positions with Genworth Financial, People's Bank, and Mechanics and Farmers Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Lori Jones Gibbs.
Good evening. Good evening. And thank you all. You know, I wonder how I got here. You never get any place without people who know you. And they kind of put you in places. So I'm going to tell you how I got here. It's this person named Bridget. And her mother is Mrs. D. And Bridget said, Lori, I need you to go and do this program with my mother. I said, but Bridget, what do you want me to say? She said, just be you. I said, oh. I said, well, Bridget, you know, normally when I speak, I talk about financial matters. And when I talk to women, I usually say things like, if your money is funny and your change is strange, you need to get a new attitude and find your financial fortitude. Or I ask the women, and the men always like this one, is, can you pass the universal purse test? And the women look at me and say, well, what is she talking about? I say, it's simple. If the pocketbook costs more than the amount of money you can keep in it in cash. Put the pocketbook down, pick up the pleather, put down the leather. I've never seen a woman tell another woman, girl, you know that's a knockoff. We may think it, we just don't say it. But anyway, it is indeed an honor to be here. When I was asked to share with the Assembly my career path, my journey to self-empowerment, my confidence, my assurance, my success, and my commitment to service, I thought to myself, I should probably start by sharing my humble beginnings. Born to loving and caring parents, and my mother's here. Thankful God she's here to be here with me. You see, my parents did not possess many material things and had very little money. Matter of fact, as a youth, my family was probably classified as socially, economically disadvantaged. Or said another way, broke, financially limited, or of low wealth. What we didn't have in money, we had in loving, caring parents who disciplined us, taught us to love one another, treat all people with respect, pursue and get a good education, fear and honor the Lord. During my informative years, until I graduated from that great state University of Connecticut, yes, I'm a Yankee and I ain't leaving, so I guess I'm a damn Yankee. And oh, I love it when we come down here and beat any of the ACC teams. You see, my family, we lived in public housing, also known as the projects. You see, although we were raised and lived with both of our parents, my father was the sole breadwinner for a family of 10. And what I didn't realize when we were growing up, you know, you get a little education, it really helps you, is that the way the system is set up in public housing is the more money you make, the more money the government takes. So you can never get enough money to save to try to get out. So where's the incentive? Anyway, my first career opportunity after college was with the Catholic Youth Organization. You know, I really thought I could save the world. I was an idealist. I wanted to help all the troubled youth in the world. Well, I quickly learned I was not prepared nor skilled to be a counselor to troubled youth. So I realized this career was not for me. So what did I do? One day I got up, I called in sick, because then you can take personal days, so you needed to be sick. And I put on a suit, and I went to 3 local banks. And that time, you could walk in the personnel office. You can't do that nowadays. You have to have the right words on the resume to get picked. I walked in 3 banks, and I had an offer from 2 of them. I said, I'm only interested in being in your management training program. I'm not starting on the teller line, because I don't have this 4-year degree to start on the teller line. So either you put me in the training program or you pass on me. My career has taken me to work with local, state, nonprofits, community banks, Fortune 100 companies. I've been in the presence of presidents, HUD secretaries. I worked for Fortune 100 companies. But all along, I've always been true to who I am. I currently work for PNC. What a great position to have. What a great opportunity to have. People say, well, tell me what you do. One thing I learned from working at the Fortune 100 company, which was called GE, I worked for them, Genworth, 13 years. Some people say, well, Lori, did you get downside? I said, no, I got laid off. Why y'all trying to clean it up? I got laid off. That happens. But I needed to figure out what my next move was going to be. You know, I said, I need a little rest. You know how you want to rest? At that time, I was 55. The message that God was sending me then is I always thought I wanted to retire at 55. And even though I'm married to a good man, I've kind of always been used to having my own money in his. But when I got laid off, see, my husband's a CPA. Y'all might hear his company name every night because they do the lottery. So you hear Thomas and Gibbs. I'm married to that Gibbs guy, and he's a true CPA. He said, well, if we lose 50% of the income, we got to reduce 50% of the spending. So he put me on a budget. I was like, oh, no, this ain't going to work. I got to find me something else to do. So, what do I like to tell you all? Simply, you must believe in who you are. You must understand that your name is your brand. And if your brand is not one of integrity, you will go nowhere. Yes. You must be prepared. You must be persistent. You must participate. And then you must perform. It's not good enough to be prepared, be persistent, participate, but not perform. When given the opportunity, you must perform. In corporate America, I've learned to master what I call practice management 101, which means know and learn how to manage your manager. It's simple. Figure out what makes them click. You're all right. I've always been able to manage the manager. My new manager says to me, girl, you really know me. I said, I figured you out quick. Figure out what they want, give it to them. If you have the manager that wants you to repeat them, repeat them. If you have a manager that really embraces your individuality, your creativity, give them that. But learn to manage your manager, and your life will be very easy. Realize that influence is more important than power, because influence brings you power. I often told my children, asking the question, given a choice, do you want power or influence? I can have power over you with no influence. But if I have influence, you give me power. Be true to who you are. Know that it is all your life experiences that will shape your life and how you embrace it. The choices you make both personally and professionally. I've always told my children, never, ever self-eliminate. Never self-eliminate. Let somebody else tell you no. Don't tell yourself no. Never, ever self-eliminate. For if you do, you will probably miss out on a lifetime opportunity. Remember, it's not where you start, it's how you finish. I stand here today, an adult woman, being married 35 years, the mother of 2 children, had become extremely financially successful. But I'm a kid, and I'm honest about I grew up in public housing. But it didn't define me. And there's so many more Lories in public housing. But what I had was guidance, direction, and discipline, which is what every child needs. But we got a group of parents nowadays, they scared of kids. I don't understand this. But anyway, I'm not supposed to talk about that today, Humphrey. That's another topic. Remember to share your time, your talents, and your treasure. I do that through my church. I do that through my sorority. So all the Delta Sigma Theta sorors who are in the house, I got to give you a shout out. I know some of them are here. I also serve as a member of the Links in the Durham chapter. And I always say to young ladies, you can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. You can have it all, but you got to prioritize. You can't have it all at the same time. You know, I look at my daughter now, and I look at her career pathing, and I look at my career pathing. Well, I had my first child at 25. My daughter's going to have her first child at 35. But I always told her, you have to do you. You have to do what's right for you. And you have to be prepared. I also told her, don't bring me any grandchildren she's not going to love, because babies don't ask to come. They need to be loved, hugged, and comforted. Finally, you need not be every woman. Just be you, love you, like you, and be proud of the woman you are. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mrs. Gibbs. Learn to manage the manager. Let's finish the race and finish it with integrity. And just be you. Just be you. So my boss is Dr. Fagan. Can we have lunch tomorrow? Our last, but certainly not the least of them all, speaker for this evening is Dr. Sharon Cooper. Now, I had a whole page of introduction. Can I do it? Oh, we're not doing that. Okay, Dr. Cooper is the CEO of Developmental and Forensic Pediatrics, a consultant firm which provides medical care, research, training, and expert witness experience in child maltreatment cases, as well as medical care for children with disabilities. She works with national and international investigative agencies on internet-facilitated crimes against children cases. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Dr. Sharon Cooper.
Well, you know, it's always nice to know that there is something at the end. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. That would be me, and it's not a train. That's what you want to know. First of all, I want to really thank Methodist University and the Department of Social Work for this particular opportunity. I will be brief. I have to tell you that as a forensic pediatrician, I could not do my job without social workers. Social workers are so key and essential. I was in the military for several years and retired from the military, and we had this designation, key and essential. That meant that you had to be in when everybody else got to stay home, and that's what social workers are to me. In fact, I was with a social worker this morning as I was evaluating yet another patient with respect to a complicated case and how is it all going to turn out. What I truly appreciate is, as many of the other speakers have said, this desire for integrity, this need to do the right thing, to not be complacent. Sometimes in our work, this work of taking care of children and the elderly and those who need our protection, it's pretty easy for us to get burned out and become complacent. And I feel that it's really important for us not to let that happen. My life story is brief. I was very fortunate. I was born to both my parents. My mom was a college professor. My father was a general surgeon. I went to college at Fisk University and medical school at Meharry Medical College. And then I called my father and said, Dad, you know what? I got this offer to do my internship in pediatrics at Tripler Army keyword, medical center. What do you think? And he said, are you kidding me? I sent my daughter to ballet and tap, and she's going to join the Army. The next thing I know I will see is that you'll be sitting on a bar stool, drinking shot whiskey and smoking a cigar. That's what he said. That is exactly what he said. I was the only girl, all brothers, you know, they're like, well, so anyway, I decided to take the plunge nevertheless, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about being the first in a lot of situations. I can remember when I was a senior major getting ready to become a lieutenant colonel, interns and residents coming to me and saying, now listen, Dr. Cooper, you just have to talk to the chief because we can't start morning report with pictures on slides of topless women. That is not going to get it. And I said, yeah, you are right about that. Let me go in and say, what were you thinking? That's what I had to go in many a time to say. I can also remember the first time I was a staff member after I'd finished my training in a hospital. I was the only female staff member in the department, and I was the most junior staff member. And I remember going to my first staff meeting. There were 5 men and me. And when I walked in the room, I could have sworn I was in a bar. There were more 4-letter words everywhere floating around, you know, and I sat in there only briefly. I very shortly thereafterwards said, oh, you know, I have to make a telephone call, and I got up and left the staff meeting. And so later on that afternoon, I went to the departmental chief, and I said, Chief, I would like to make sure I just make a standard meeting time with you every Wednesday afternoon at 3:30. Our staff meetings were Wednesday at lunchtime. And he said, well, why do you want to come meet with me on Wednesdays at 3:30? And I said, well, the staff meeting as it is now is untenable for me. But that's my problem, not yours. So therefore, I won't be coming to those staff meetings. But I will be glad and do desire to come and talk to you afterwards. You'd be amazed how those staff meetings got cleaned up. You know, I wasn't going to go in and be a bleeding heart because the Army and the military and many systems are sharks. If you come in as a bleeding anything, they will simply attack you. So you really have to look at a system and make a determination about how you can have your way and still be a team player. And that is, I think, an art in actuality. I was very fortunate. I was in the military for several years. I retired, started my own corporation. And since that time, really amazing things have opened up to me. I've had an opportunity to work probably with every federal investigative agency in the country, the Secret Service, Homeland Security, certainly the FBI, very closely, lots of different organizations. But I do remember and want to share with you the day that I got a call saying, we'd like for you to come and make a presentation in France. And I said, wow, that would be kind of fun. Where am I going to? And they said, you're going to come to Interpol and do a presentation. That was truly an experience. And since that time, years have gone by. I was asked, in fact, about 3 years ago by Interpol to write their chapter for their next book, which I did, on child sexual abuse and sexual exploitation. So it's really an honor to get an opportunity to serve. The most important thing that I would like to say is to, if you're going to do something, do your best. And when I'm teaching residents and interns and young physicians, especially about child abuse, I often say to them, listen, every child abuse case has a weak link. My goal for you is for you not to be it. Do not be the weak link, okay? Let that be somebody else who gets on the witness stand and who knows what they're saying. But you make it your job to do your very best because these are children's lives that we are working to save. So I really want to thank so much the committee for inviting all of us. I speak for all of you, don't I? Yeah, there it is. I get to be the amen corner here. And I'm summarizing that we heard about passion, and we heard about compassion, and we heard about money and meanness and how to be aware of that, how to perform and manage a manager. And I guess what I would like to say for you is to keep your bar high. Do the very best that you can. Don't underestimate yourself, and ask God to guide your footsteps. Thank you.
Let's give Dr. Cooper another hand clap. Thank you, Dr. Cooper. Thank you, Dr. Cooper. You are not the weakest link. You are not the weakest link. Dr. Marilyn Bryant, the Honorable Patricia Timmons Goodson, the Honorable Margaret Highsmith Dixon, Mrs. Lori Jones Gibbs, Dr. Sharon Cooper, thank you. Thank you for gracing us this evening. Thank you. Did we all get some bread of life this evening? Yes. And we're going to take it because we've been given many charges this evening, correct? Yes. We're going to go out and change the world, starting with me, right? Yes. Holding up my integrity, but not my expensive pocketbook. All right? And we have a presentation this evening. This is what you see here. I am not going to say anything about the presentation because that's not my job. My job for the evening is completed. I thank you all for your listening ears. I appreciate you. So, right now I am going to introduce the awesome, the magnificent Professor Dayampert McCall, also known as Professor D.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I'll get to the mic. Ouch. Don't worry, I got you. Thank you, Trayvon. There'll be stars in your crown, Trayvon, if you don't let me fall. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now you see how awesome and how special our event is this evening. And so what we in the social work department wanted to do, we wanted a visual rendering of this very special event. We wanted it to live in the hearts and the minds of our students and those who are attending this event this evening. So our art piece was painted by an accomplished artist, Cynthia St. James, who will lend the sixth voice to the women of power and service. As you can see from our program, Cynthia St. James is a well-renowned multicultural visual artist. She is an award-winning author and is the illustrator of 17 children's books. She's a very popular speaker. She's an educator. She's an architectural designer. And she has garnered so many awards. She serves as a global ambassador for Susan G. Komen for the Cure's Circle of Promise. So now what I want to do is the unveiling of our painting. This is our painting that we're presenting tonight. And these are our social work students who did the unveiling for me, Trayvon Scott and Samuel Robinson. But let me give you a description of the painting. So clockwise now, from the bottom left, you will see Methodist University students working with multicultural children at a child agency, fulfilling what we call a field practicum. And this is a requirement in the social work major. Okay? Just above that, you will see a clinical social worker with a patient. The top row going left to right is multicultural women of various backgrounds, okay, including business women, a teacher, professor, a judge, a politician, and an international social worker. Social work is global, depicting social work in Africa and throughout. Just below that, you will see 2 MU students. They are impressed and they are very inspired. Now you guys are inspired, right? Very inspired by the influential women they are looking up to. And at the bottom right, you will see a social worker working with an elderly woman. We are proud of our artwork, and we look forward to having it hung, I believe, in our library, so that our students will have the opportunity to relish in it and to look at it, and all of those who visit our library will be inspired. We thank you so much. Thank you very much. Okay, now that finished my part. I'm going to stand up straight. Okay. Is Carla coming up? Do you want me to go sit down?
No, ma'am.
Oh. Oh, please. Shit, I'm not going to. Okay, Carla is on point. Okay. Tracy? George?
Yep. What we want to do now is share this wonderful painting with our honored guests. So we have one to present to each of our guests.
You got it, Tracy?
Give it.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah, you need to read. Okay, call it.
What it says is MU, Powerful Women in Service, March 26, 2015. You've had the privilege and the honor tonight to listen to 5 powerful women. And now it's our social work department's privilege and honor to honor, I call her the wings, the wind beneath our wings, and our unsung shero, Charlene Covington. Come
Charlene,
forth.
come on down.
Charlene is officially the administrative assistant for the School of Public Affairs, but in reality, she is the administrative assistant for social work. Don't get offended, guys, but we just claim her. We claim her.
We love you, Charlene. We love you.
It is my privilege to thank each and every one of you who came out tonight to share in this event and to make it a success. I would like to acknowledge two people by name so I don't get in trouble. And those two people are our First Lady, Mrs. Debbie Hancock, and our former First Lady, Mrs. Jerry Hendricks. I would like to honor our sponsors, without whom this would not have happened. BWC Consulting LLC, Piper, Jaffrey and Company, the Holt Company, PNC, OC and Deborah Murray.
Deborah.
Wait. Michael and Lynn Green, the Social Work Club, Students Organized for the Advancement of North Carolina, and the Phi Alpha Honor Society. I would also like to acknowledge Haynes.
Yes.
Angela Hawkins, Vice President and General Manager, Haynes Brand Incorporated, provided gift bags for everyone. This was her way of expressing her commitment to this event and to Methodist University. And you all can receive your gift bag on your way out. I want to come back, Tracy. I want to give a special shout out to the members of Peace Memorial Christian Church who came to support Tracy.
Yes.
I also want to acknowledge the representatives from the agencies that have provided the social work department with internship sites and with shadowing opportunities. I know there are many of you out there tonight, and we so thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge our partners at Fort Bragg and all of the agencies that serve Fayetteville, Greater Cumberland County, and the state of North Carolina. Thank you all for coming. I want to thank my colleagues in the social work department, and I want you all to know that Tracy Hines chaired this event. Without Tracy, it would not have happened. And to our Methodist students, thank you for coming. We do this for you. You're the reason we're here.
Amen.
You're the reason we're here. Okay. It is now did I forget anything? Okay. It is now my honor and my privilege to introduce the man who has the best job in the world, Dr. Ben Hancock,
And the best faculty in the world.
who has the best faculty and the best students, our president.
So what in the world can a white middle-aged guy say after hearing from 8 and 9, if you include our artists, 9 voices from 9 of the most outstanding women in America, if not the world? What can one say? Probably nothing. If I'm a wise president. The comment was made making the distinction between power and influence, and by position, by title, one would say I have power, but the influence is right over there in that First Lady.
Amen.
But let me just, in the short time that I want to take, let me just share one message with you. And for some of the students in the room, you've heard me share this message before, so I won't apologize for being redundant, but it's worth repeating. We've heard stories from these women up front, and we've all gained from those stories. And I've gained from the stories of women in my life, my grandmother, God rest her soul, my mother, many teachers, and the First Lady. But I will say to you, female, male, girl, boy, student, every person has a story. The key to success, the key to personal fulfillment is to never forget that every person has a story. And to know that we each have a responsibility to listen to each and every person's story. It's the key to their own self-esteem, valuing themselves that someone listens, someone cares to their story. In fact, I would venture, without being a social worker, that may be the very premise of the work that you do, is to value the human condition, value the story that each and every person has to tell. So I challenge each and every one of us in this room, and each and every person that you can challenge, to remember the value of each person's story. We were all the beneficiaries of the stories that were shared with us this evening, but that's just the beginning. The real value is the stories that you listen to each and every day from every person who is special, every person who's outstanding, and every person who wants and needs a chance to tell that story. So I encourage you, I challenge you, I plead with you to take the time to do that. And I know our students will, they get it. And I'm so impressed, I'm in awe of our students who take the time to listen, who care about one another. It's the greatest gift we have, is to listen. We all know our own stories, so we learn nothing by telling our own story. It's by telling the stories of others, listening to the stories of others. Thank you, ladies, for sharing your stories. I won't manage the manager, Mary Lynn. You're my manager. I promise not to manage you. I wouldn't even begin to try to manage you. And with that, good night. Thank you all for coming. Nice to be with you.
Thank you, President Hancock. Panelists, as I listened to all of the wonderful words, motivation this evening, I was reminded of the incredible words from Matthew. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your service. You're truly incredible human beings. And I learned a whole lot from all of you this evening. So thank you. I can't think of a better way to close us out than to close us out in a word of prayer tonight. So please pray with me. Dear Lord, we thank you for the many contributions in the field of social work and the numerous women leaders who have championed the call to advocacy, empowerment, and social change. We ask you to continue to guide and protect our practitioners, grant them protection, safety, and courage to do your will. Dear Lord, we ask you to continue working through our panelists. Grant them the wisdom to do your will, the strength to continue their daily work, and the same passion for others that you have for us. We ask your continued blessings on Methodist University, our students, faculty, and staff. We know that all we have become is due to your continued blessings. As we depart this evening, guide our thoughts and actions and equip us to make the world a better place for others. We offer this prayer in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for coming. Refreshments in the lobby.